Xolelwa, 2008, we had a phenomenon whereby brothers and sisters from outside our borders, let's say 61 people actually passed away, of which 21 of those people were South Africans. 2015, we're still talking about the same thing, and it has made international use. And it's the topic that everyone is talking about right now, 2015, April, xenophobia. Just in a few words, would you like maybe to explain to us, or maybe have a description that the use of the word xenophobia in context with what is actually happening and the way you actually understand it, and whether it is xenophobia or not?
And xenophobia is the fear of foreigners or people who are not from within one's borders. And I would disagree in terms of naming what has happened in South Africa as xenophobia. Back in 2008, we thought it was, but you've also said it yourself that there was a lot of South Africans that also died there. So if South Africans are also dying, is it really fear of an outsider, or is it some other form of fear? And in terms of what has happened now, it's becoming a lot clearer, but I still don't think we actually have it. Now we're calling it Afrophobia because it seems to be limited to people who are from other African countries and not all foreigners. So now we are naming it Afrophobia. But also when you look at even those who are killed, I mean, you don't have Botswana getting killed or people from Swaziland getting killed. It's another kind of African. So what are we going to say? Is it now not Afrophobia, but maybe fear of those from the Lusophone or Francophone Africa? But I just think that as South Africans, we are so desperate in trying to label a symptom of our woundedness without really getting to the core of what it is that's causing it. Others have said it's a scramble for resources, but I'd like us to go a bit deeper than what it is, because it's very violent, and for me it's a reflection, or it's a manifestation of something a lot deeper.
Okay. Would you then label the rest of South Africans to be of that ukulimala, that is the injury that has been caused by so many factors? Or would you maybe isolate the problem to the black population because it's reported as xenophobia? And the Nigerians, for instance, they're not killed by colored people, they're not killed by white people. But it so happens that it happens in communities whereby your Group Areas Act of 19 whatever that actually spatially designed our locations in terms of from town and location. But these things actually happen where there's predominantly black people. What about your white South Africans? Why don't they act the same if, for instance, us as South African is that damaged?
I think white South Africans are killing each other also on a daily basis. You know, they're killing each other in the homes. You know, colored people are killing each other. Black people are killing each other. We're also killing across races. And I'd like to differ there in terms of these things that seem to be happening in poor areas or in the townships. That's what we've seen in media. That's how media has framed it, and that's what you get to see on your CNN. But there's many incidences, I think, as we're sitting here right now, a South African is dying at the hands of another South African, and it does not necessarily mean that it's a black South African. It's all of us are equally wounded, and sometimes I suspect that white South Africans are even more wounded than black South Africans. So there is a collective woundedness that we carry as a nation, and a colleague of mine said, it's now reaching psychotic levels, and we just don't know what to do with it, and we're trying to find ways to describe it, define it, or name it. And I think it's actually it's easier to name it as xenophobia, because then you bring in the army, you make declarations, you make a speech, you march, and it's dealt with, and then it creeps up again a few years down the line. So I don't think it's xenophobia. I don't think it's Afrophobia. I think it's the collective woundedness that we carry with ourselves every day.
Some people actually believe that this is a post-94 syndrome, whereby Ghanaians, for instance, in the Eastern Cape, where I come from, they've been there. They've been our science teachers, mathematics teachers. In certain instances, there wasn't a great number of Nigerians, but you'd get the same Ghanaians doing door-to-door saleswomen or salesmen selling pillows and duvets and whatever. And they've been accepted in that community. However, post-94, it seems, and when I say it seems, it's something that I picked up, for instance, from a Kenyan, that actually feels that by us saying whether it is innate in terms of our exposure to a violent society, or it's innate in terms of our ignorance of what lies beyond the border. Do you think maybe this is something new? Or do you think, when I'm saying new, it would be about 20, 21 years and counting? Or do you think it is something that goes pre-1994?
In terms of the violence, it's nothing new. It's just that post-94, there's been such a great influx of people from other African countries. So now they get to experience our everyday. Because what I'd like to say is that this is our everyday. But now they're here in huge numbers, so they get to see or feel what an ordinary South African feels on a daily basis. For as long as I can remember, people have been burnt in the township from the 1980s. If you were caught during the consumer boycott buying from the shop, you get burnt. Even now, in the present, in Limpopo, if you're accused of being a witch, you get burnt. In the township, if you're caught stealing a phone, you get burnt. So in poor areas, this is how it happens. But I think South Africans in general are just very violent people. It could be maybe the tools that are used to, inflict the violence that is different, Maybe in the townships they don't have enough guns to shoot one another, but in Sandton, the tools are more sophisticated, so the reporting then becomes different. But I still maintain that South Africans are killing each other every day. They've been doing it for a very long time.
Are you saying maybe our culture of violence is slightly extreme as compared to our neighboring countries, more especially African countries?
I said we've reached psychotic levels. We are recovering from psychological warfare. So you can just imagine an individual who's been abused for years and years and years. And the way it would manifest later in life, it could be through psychosis, it could have, many other, mental or psychological, the symptoms that would manifest. But I think now, in this case, it's a collective. So I'd like to think of South Africa as this person who's wounded and they have not been diagnosed, and the treatment is not proper. Can you imagine if you've got someone with schizophrenia and they're misdiagnosed and they keep getting this medication, you get the wrong treatment for it, and can you imagine what it does? And that's why right now that woundedness has reached psychotic levels. We don't know what to do with it, and we are scrambling and we're desperate to nail it in the bud, but we have to do difficult work.